Hello, Tom. How lovely to see you.
Good to see you.
It's a real pleasure to actually get to connect.
Indeed.
You're like me. You come early.
Yes, well, sometimes there are technical difficulties, and I like to leave just a few minutes for working those out.
I'm exactly the same. Exactly the same. Whereabouts are you?
Right now, I am in Birmingham, Alabama.
Okay. Is that home or are you moving around doing things?
I'm moving around. That is home for now, and it's
Okay.
going to be a permanent home in about 2, maybe 3 months. I'll be moving here, but I bought this house, but don't have anything in it, and I have a laptop sitting on top of a cardboard box, sitting on top of an old trash table, and I have a blanket stretched between two doors behind me. So that's my makeshift studio.
That is beautifully deconstructed. It gives a whole different feeling for where you are and how it must be. Yeah, I'm in the converted garage at the end of my garden in Glastonbury in the United Kingdom.
Ah, well,
So
that's lovely. I have some good friends that just moved back to England. Keith Warner, who is from Sowell, which is I guess, a section outside of London, and his wife, who is actually from Southern California, but they've lived in England, and then they lived in France for a while, then back to the United States, and now they've gone back to England. So they've just moved back a few weeks ago. They were the people who did all of my events. They're called MBT events, and lovely, lovely people.
what does that stand for, Tom?
It's MBT is my big toe, which
Oh
is the
yes, of
name of the
course. Yeah, yeah.
books. Yeah,
Sorry, foolish of me.
yeah, they were the kind of event managers that put on all the speaking events that did all my away games.
So when I was speaking to the people who helped make this happen, which has been a few,
Hmm.
um, I talked about, well, we might be able to put it within this series that I've done, speaking to a lot of amazing people, which has been really my excuse to speak to interesting people, and I called it "What Is Life," and just simply because it felt like the conversation I really wanted to have with people, and I'd love to have it with you, obviously now, is to ask, to start off a conversation from your now in you've lived a life. I've also lived a life, not as long as you, but I've lived a life. I've been looking at this strange thing that's happening as intensely as I can. I know you've been doing the same. The thing I wake up with every day is, okay, so what is this? And what should we do with it? And everything I do kind of comes from that sense of, wow, this is so mysterious and interesting. And what do you think it is that we've been experiencing all this time?
Well, start right off with the big question: Are we recording
We
yet?
are. We're off.
Okay, so we're off and going. All right. Well, I don't know how much you know about me, but I have a kind of a scientific theory about all of it. I am a scientist, I'm a physicist, and I also have been working uh, on the spiritual side all at the same time. I've had about as many years studying consciousness and altered states and paranormal phenomena as I have had, doing physics. So I have both of those careers under my belt. And eventually I figured out how does it work and why does it work that way? And basically it comes down to an idea that consciousness is fundamental and everything else is created from consciousness. So consciousness is the fundamental thing. Now, when I say consciousness, I'm not talking about something that the brain creates. I'm talking about something that's more fundamental than a brain. I'm talking about what other people would call spirit or soul. It's that thing that animates who we are, kind of who we are at the core, not who we pretend to be, not our image, but who we really are at the core of our being. So that's consciousness. And in that process, I found that if you understand consciousness really well, and I've been working on that, like, I don't know, I'm going on 81 now, and I've been working on it since I was in my middle 20s. So it's been a long, long time. But I found out that we we humans, we are not really um, human beings. We are consciousness. We're a piece of consciousness. And we are playing an avatar human being. So we're really pieces of consciousness. So we're not flesh and blood. We're soul, if you like it, or spirit. And we're here to make choices. And by those choices that we make, by the quality of those choices, we evolve toward love or de-evolve toward fear. And that's our purpose here in this particular virtual reality we call the physical universe. But the interesting thing is that I got to that through what philosophy and my understanding of consciousness as it grew, many years of research trying to understand consciousness. And I found out that if you understand consciousness, you can understand physics. I can derive from first principles quantum mechanics and relativity. Those things are subsets. They're not fundamental things. They're subsets. So you can derive physics and you end up with a more complete physics, a more general physics than the physics we have now. And that more general and complete physics takes into its purview of things that it talks about: spirituality, love, all of the all of the things that we've been saying for a long time, like we're all one. And it turns out that's exactly true. Even from a scientific viewpoint, we are all one. So it defines love as the nature of a low entropy consciousness, which is low entropy just means a consciousness that is love. Those two work out in this model. And this model doesn't have a lot of assumptions. It only has one assumption, and that's consciousness exists. And everything else after that is deductive logic. So it is a science, and it also explains, and I've read or seen a little bit of what you do, and this also explains what God is and where God comes from. God is basically what I call the larger consciousness system. It's just that big piece of consciousness from which we're all pieces. We're all one with that larger consciousness system. Now, that kind of a thing is a metaphor. We always speak in metaphors. We don't speak in terms of literal things because we don't have the language to talk about spiritual things or non-physical things. Our language is created to describe and talk about physical things and feelings, but we tend to use metaphors in our speech. It's like this, rather than this is it. It's like this. So those are metaphors. So my larger consciousness system is a metaphor for source, all that is. Or if you're more theological, God. That's what we all come for. So those are all equivalent. And I take that idea from the tiniest piece of consciousness that you can possibly have, which is an awareness with the simple choice of a binary choice, an awareness that knows that it's in state A or state B and can differentiate between the two. I define consciousness as awareness with a choice. That's consciousness. So the simplest form is awareness that can be in a binary. And I take that and show that how consciousness would have to evolve, not that it could evolve this way, but it's the only path open really for its evolution, and end up with a larger consciousness system and us being subsets, so pieces of that larger conscious system. The virtual reality we call the physical universe, how that virtual reality was created, why it was created. So all that falls out uh, in this logical process. So that's kind of in a nutshell. That's
I'm just
kind of
making some
where,
notes here because you said so many things which are fascinating. I just want to
yeah.
grab a few of them. I want to grab that last thing as well that you just said then about so the simplest form of consciousness. Okay. Um, Good. Well, there's three things at least. There's loads more. Let me just tell you a little bit about what's happened for me then, because then we can see where we're going to go. Because there's going to be so many different places we could go. So, long story short, of course, as you've just done, for me, it started when I was a child. 12 years old, I had my first awakening experience that changed my world, and I've been exploring these different states of spiritual experience in every way I possibly could, on and off, ever since. And that led eventually to writing books on all the spiritual traditions of the world, taking a perennial philosophy
Mhm.
angle. And so I did about 35 books and ended up from that developing something which is nowhere near as worked out and as full as what you have done, I know, and what you described, probably around the same time, maybe a little bit after, trying to move towards what I think is very similar ideas. It's all in consciousness, and and so forth. Also, that view of quantum physics. I'm not a physicist, but it's fascinated me for a long time. I've just been working on it now, actually. So, I'm a layman's interest in that as well. And then about 10 years ago, maybe 12 now, everything changed. And I started to think I was wrong. And that what I'd been saying previously, I needed to revise it. And then what's come from that, and this is why I'm, full of admiration of what you've done because I know what it takes. I've kind of, I'm not trying to pinch your lovely, beautiful phrase of the toe idea, but I've kind of developed my own big toe, as it were, of trying of something which started with a book behind me, Soul Story, and has now gone into a video format of a book as videos, which I'm just beginning to unleash on the world as best I can. But it's big, like yours. It's going to be like this 100 chapters or something to really articulate how everything from physics, like you, right the way through to God and to life, death, all of that fits together. But I ended up having to question things like the primacy of consciousness. And I began to feel like I'd picked up on that because of the perennial philosophy, which I admire, because it felt like, well, that's the only option, that's the only alternative to physicalism, or whatever you want to call that materialist tradition, which seems obviously wrong. And so can't account for all of these things I've been experiencing all my life. So the option is it's all in consciousness. And then I began to think it wasn't the only option, and that there were other ways of seeing. There was, in particular, what I've been exploring, which didn't have to posit there's a thing called consciousness within which things exist, but could account for all those spiritual experiences and why they're so important, and the survival of death and all of that, in a evolutionary way, which actually dovetailed much more with mainstream science than I'd expected. And and I've come to wonder. So the thing I wanted to pick up on was because there's obviously a lot of similarities too, but I wanted to pick on what you said. You can just start from consciousness, and then you can deduce from that everything.
Mhm.
And I think I have two questions with that. One is, what makes you think we should start from consciousness? Is it simply that that's the best way of explaining things? Or is there something which goes, no, look, consciousness is clearly the ground, or the essence, or whatever word you prefer? And how do you then deduce everything from just starting with consciousness?
Okay. Three questions there. I, yeah, it's kind of some of all of those. You know, answers are usually never, it's just a single idea. The world
True
is
enough.
more complicated than that,
Yeah.
but yes, Consciousness seems to be the fundamental thing. That's our awareness. We're conscious. We think. And from that, from the Descartes moment of I think, therefore I am, you can turn that around and say I am, because I think. But that's who we are. If we let go of everything else, if we let go of all our sense data, all five senses, we let them all go, what are we? We're a piece of consciousness. We're awareness floating in a black void.
So why do you prefer that to the more common sense view, which is kind of probably where I've ended up going back to, but with a new way, which is going, well, I can because I've trained myself for all these years, I can step into a world now where I am the presence of consciousness, witnessing this moment. It's all arising as sensations within this big spacious presence. And I can do that. And it's like, oh yeah, I can experience it like that. And I can then flip it around and go, oh, now I can experience it. And there's a kind of there's a oneness for sure. Everything's existing. So I think of it as a oneness of being. Everything's existing and it's all qualified in these different ways and existing in you and me and everything, the table and the chair. And then there's Tim. And Tim is a very complex set of informational system who is conscious, which means he can read the world around him. And that's what it is to be conscious. But most of the information I'm taking in unconsciously, vast majority of it, and then whatever I focus on, I take in consciously. Why? And then if I just imagine being just conscious of being and losing my senses, then but it would still be me that was conscious of being, and what I am is this psychobiological system.
I don't see any difference between those two. I think they're both all part of the same thing. It's you are this individuated unit of consciousness.
Well, that's different, though, isn't it? It's different to go. Well, you're a abstract consciousness thing, and going. You're actually a human being, and you're conscious of the universe.
No, I don't see a really big difference. It all ends up with the same, with the same endpoint. Pretty much, it gets to many of the same conclusions in the same way. Okay. I just think that's just a matter of kind of perception. It's a matter of the way you want to structure, beingness, the way you want to structure sentiousness. So you can say that from that perspective. I just see it as two different perspectives of the same thing.
I hear what you're saying.
I don't see anything really different. I see just two different perspectives on the same thing. You can look at it this way, or you can look at it that way, but it's all really the same thing.
Okay, so that is incredible. You can just
restructure basically the way you look at it. So it's more of a perceptual thing.
So that is exactly you've just articulated perfectly, actually, the view that I was putting forward in one of my books, Lucid Living, which was probably one of the best books I wrote. Exactly that, like, oh, you can see it both ways. And now I think, yeah, but why would I see it this other way? Because I can account for everything with the human view. Why would I go, I'm this abstract thing called consciousness? What would that? Because if you think you're an abstract thing called consciousness, you can just go, yeah. And if you go into the dream, you can be Tim and see it from Tim's perspective because you're in the dream, which is in consciousness. But that presumes the consciousness perspective. It doesn't, it just assumes that. Whereas if you take the human perspective, you don't need to add this thing called the presence of consciousness. You can just go, look, this is a complex system that's evolved in the world. I'm not a physicalist. I'm not going to go down that road, but nevertheless, this is evolved. It's conscious. It's experiencing this imaginal realm of psyche. Why posit an abstract thing called a consciousness rather than what seems to be, which is a system taking in information, some of it unconsciously, and others that the information it focuses on in a kind of HD processing, and there it is. You focus on it, and you're conscious of it. I can't work out anymore why we would want to go to postulate an abstract consciousness entity.
Well, I would say the reason that you would want to posit an abstract entity called consciousness is that has a lot of logical implications that explain a whole array of things.
Okay.
Not only does it explain, let's say, the paranormal and what is it and why is it and what are its limitations and what can it do and can't do and why can you sometimes do it and not. And so it explains all of those things, what they are in a very logical way. But it also explains a lot of physics. If you go that way, you can answer all of the paradoxes that we have pretty much in metaphysics and the big paradoxes in physics. We have like the physicists, when they did the double slit experiment, they realized that reality wasn't what they thought, and that physicalism, as you say, is not the right answer because they found out that one at the bottom of reality is not little particles, but probability. And the second thing they found out is what the experimenter knows, what he understands, will change the experiment. If he knows this, the experiment comes out one way. If he doesn't know that, the experiment comes out a different way. So the experiment has to do with his knowledge, the information that he has. Now, those are two big mysteries in physics. And, the physicists come up with a metaphor that says the probability wave collapses to a physical particle. Well, that's nonsense. It doesn't make any sense. Probability wave is a piece of mathematics. Pieces of mathematics do not collapse to physical particles. That doesn't make sense. But in my theory, I can explain exactly how that takes place. Not the metaphor, but the actual process of how quantum mechanics works. I can explain the lots of things. I can explain the idea
Let's
that
stick with that one, Tom, because that's a really interesting
okay,
one. I've just happened to have been doing a couple of chapters in this pod book that I'm working on exactly this, and the things that struck, because I was watching a video of yours actually, which was lovely, and you were quoting all of the quantum physicists that I've quoted in my books, and it was all it's like because they're great
yeah,
quotes, aren't they?
yeah, that was breakthrough. Yeah.
Yeah, it was fantastic. What really fascinated me though, as I've come back to it over the years, is, well, first of all, that in spiritual circles you'd think that that was established physics, but of course in physics circles it's not. It's not, the statistics when physicists are asked how many people follow that view, it's very, very small compared to other views. And so that interests me. That is why physicists have gone the other way. So I mean, it's a big thing. I'm not going to try and put across everything to you here, just to explore little bits. But the alternative way of seeing it, that it's not a big mind or it's not a big thing, like physicalism and idealism. The other option, it feels to me, is that it's all about relationship, and that the fundamental formlessness, oneness of being, let's call it, is in relationship, which is your duality, that fundamental duality, and that's information. That's the bit. And from that bit comes all information. No consciousness involved until way, until at least 10 billion years into that process.
Mhm.
Then you're going to get consciousness. But what you're going to have the whole way through is relationality. And that, what intrigues me about the place that modern physics has got to in quantum physics, is that the decoherence is arising from the relationship between systems, and that feels like a really coherent way of seeing it, and leads to a world in which we go, oh, and what am I? Well, I'm a system in relationship. I am the whole thing has arisen as Tim in relationship to everything else, and consciousness is a very emergent form of that relationship. And then you don't have it. It's not a big it, or it's not a big mind. It's the it and the they're all arising within this one process of evolving information.
Yeah. Well, let me just finish that thought that I had before I address
Oh,
that, and
sorry,
that is
Tom. I
that's
didn't
all
mean to
right.
interrupt you.
That's it. this model of mine, because it's very structured.
Hmm.
See, and yours is not structured. It's at
Really?
least, well, in the way I'm thinking of it, it's just relationship. It just is. It just happens. It exists, but because it does. It's all relationship. But anyway, that's my mind, and I don't have a problem with that. In my model, it's all about relationship too.
Sure.
It's all about relationship. You know, consciousness and subsets of consciousness make up a social system, and it's all about relationship. It's all about connection.
Yeah.
It's all about how we treat each other. It's all about the choices that we make within that relationship. So relationship is at the very core of it. That's what, that's how we evolve. That's how we move forward. But anyway, a model in physics, a model is good. And this thing I'm telling you is a model. I'm not saying this is the way reality is. I'm saying here is a model of reality.
Right.
See?
Likewise.
Yeah. And a model is a good model in physics if it explains all the things that we know now. It explains some things that we don't know now, but we find out later are true.
Yeah.
And it has to have very few assumptions.
Yeah.
It has to start with, and in mine, I have one assumption: consciousness exists.
Okay.
So I start with the assumption that consciousness exists, which of course will color all the rest of the model, because it starts with consciousness.
Yeah.
So with that, then I can deduce all of these facts that we know in science.
Can you give me an
Okay.
example of what you mean by that,
Yeah.
Tom?
Okay. Yeah. Well, I told you the two with the quantum physics. You can show that why it has to be probability at the base. You can show why the information makes a difference.
Okay.
You can also
Just choose one. Just
Okay,
choose.
well, let me just give you a couple of more, and you can pick one. You can explain why the speed of light is a constant. That's another big thing that people don't know. You can explain things like what's it called? I get the right name for it. The anthropic principle of cosmology,
Mm-hmm.
where there's all of these numbers that have to be tuned to each other.
Mm-hmm.
To like 8 or 9 decimal places. And if you
Incredible.
change the decimal place anywhere, it wouldn't work. There wouldn't be life here. And it explains exactly how that process occurred, how all that tuning of those things occurred, and so on. There's other things in physics that are what we call paradoxes. The physicists know this is the way the world is. There's quite a set of those. There's several of them in quantum physics, but anyway, these things then are understandable with this model. It does all that. So in a model that will explain all the things, and I don't mean just general, airy philosophical things, but hard things in physics, and questions we have in theology.
So Tom, I'd be absolutely fascinated. I mean, obviously, I don't know if you could deduce from consciousness the assumption of that consciousness is the essence, let's say.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I don't know which one would be best to do. Obviously, we're just having a conversation, and you've written about this in detail. But is there is there one of those, the speed of light, or something where you can just go, look, bang, 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 this is how I deduce
sure.
it?
Oh yeah, very simply.
Okay, great.
Very simple. Well, let me just make a few statements, and if you want me to go back further than that, it'll take a little longer. But very shortly, I can say that this reality that we call the physical universe is a computed reality, a virtual reality, in which the humans are the avatars and the consciousness is the player. Okay, now in a virtual reality such as this one, everything is down into the pixels, right? We have a certain amount of resolution
Tom, sorry, but if you're going to deduce it, can you start with just consciousness and actually deduce each step for me, or is that?
Yes, I can do that.
Yeah.
Yes, but that'll take a little longer,
Okay.
but that's all right. I'll
If you
try to
don't mind,
stay.
I mean, I don't want to push you
Yeah.
into anything which is
Yeah, I was just going to jump up close to the ending, and then, like I said,
no, no. It's
we
it's the
could go
idea of
back.
starting just with consciousness. You know, look, there's hardly any difference between what we're
Okay.
saying, I'm sure, but I'm
Yeah.
just really intrigued by this idea that just starting with consciousness, something which is just so presumably, you know, you're not saying it's an intelligence, you're just saying it's conscious. That's it.
It's awareness with a choice.
Okay,
Okay.
so it's
Well, to
awareness
start
with a binary choice.
with a binary choice, and that's
Okay, so
all you
that's
have.
very close. So so what I'm exploring, which is very close, is actually the same, just without it being conscious. That it's just that it's no,
Yeah.
and not choice exactly, but that a fundamental undifferentiatedness is in the process of differentiating. So that's a kind of it's quite similar,
Yeah. Okay. So
but not
let me,
conscious. I think
yeah,
that's
let
something
me,
later. So take me
yeah,
from
it's
consciousness.
conscious. And anyway, let's see where we're going to start. Okay. We have consciousness. It's a binary. It's an awareness. It can be in state one or state zero.
Okay.
Okay. That's binary.
Yeah.
Now, because it's aware, it, all consciousness, well, that's a step a little later. So let's say it's aware that it's in a one, then it's aware it's in a zero, then aware it's in another zero, and then it's aware it's in another one, and so on. So consciousness, being aware, also has to have memory. Memory is necessary to being aware because otherwise everything you're aware of would be the first time you were ever aware of anything.
So where did
And
memory come from?
memory is a part of being aware. You can't be aware without memory. If you have no memory, then everything you're aware of would be the first thing you had ever been aware of.
So I'm completely with you, and it's quite similar to, you know, and obviously
Uh-huh.
you were way before I was doing anything, so you know, hat off to you.
Yeah.
But if you're deducing it from consciousness,
Hmm.
and you already said that consciousness is not just conscious; it's a choice between two binary states,
It's aware of that choice.
aware of a choice between two binary states.
Yeah.
So you've got three assumptions now, and now you're adding memory. That's another assumption, unless you can deduce it from the existence of consciousness.
No, I think that's not. It's logically necessary for awareness to exist. You can't have an awareness. An awareness is aware that this is happening or aware that it's that way. You
Right.
have to have an awareness. You can't be aware of something if you don't have memory. So memory is logically contained within that awareness. And that is, if you didn't have memory, everything you were ever aware of would be the first time you were aware of anything.
Well,
So you couldn't
why
then,
couldn't it be that way? You know, why in
because
this
then,
model couldn't it just be
be,
that way? That the ground of awareness was experiencing everything for the first time. Where did the memory come from? I mean, I think there is memory,
yeah,
by the way. I agree, but I don't see it as
it-
deductive. I don't see how you've got to it.
logically necessary for the awareness is, I guess, how I get there. But if you want to
Okay.
make that
Okay.
another, it's logically necessary for the awareness.
All right.
Otherwise, the awareness has no awareness really. The awareness says, "Oh, I'm a one. Oh, now, the next thing it says is, oh, I'm a zero, but it doesn't remember that it was in a one.
Yep.
So it can't build anything. It can't go anywhere. It's completely stuck at whatever it's aware of is the only thing it's ever been aware of. And then it's aware of something else, and that's the only thing it's ever been aware of. So
Yep.
for a functional awareness that says, yes, I'm aware of this as this, then
So
it
why
seems to me
isn't Tom?
memory is logically
I,
necessary, or
I,
you end
I,
up with the zero level of functionality. It's got no function.
I agree with you. I hear what you're saying, and why you would say that. The thing I'm stumbling on is why that isn't just simply going, oh, I need to make another assumption then.
It's all right. We can do it that way.
Okay.
I can say it has a second assumption. You can say that if you
Okay.
want to do that. To me, it's kind of implied logically that it has to be that way. Otherwise, the awareness is non-functional. It doesn't do anything.
Okay. Okay.
It has no ability to function.
Okay.
It's dysfunctional awareness without memory.
Okay.
Memory now allows it to actually do something,
Okay.
you
Yep.
see.
Yep.
So I just think that's part of awareness is that it would have to have memory, or the term awareness doesn't mean anything.
Okay. Yeah. I think
It's
that's probably right.
it,
Yeah.
it's a meaningless thing if all it is everything it's aware of is the first thing it's ever been aware of,
Yeah, yeah.
then it's totally non-functional. So maybe I'm starting with an assumption of a functional awareness.
Okay.
Okay. We can say that. All right. So it has memory. So it can remember the patterns, the one, the zero, the zeros and ones. Okay. And in that memory, it can uh, make certain patterns mean something. Oh, here's a pattern. Ah, let that pattern stand for this. The pattern can mean things. And eventually, as it evolves, it will it will create larger patterns and patterns of patterns, and that's what evolution does. It gains more complexity, and I call it, this is lowering entropy. Entropy is a measure of disorder, and if you make patterns and things, you're creating order. So you're lowering entropy, and that's how consciousness evolves. Now, the next thing to look at, that's just one idea. The next idea we look at is that what is this awareness? Well, it gathers information. That's what it's aware of. I'm aware of this. So it takes in information. It has processing. It looks at that information and compares it to what it has in its memory. Oh, this is what it is now. That's what it was. And that's kind of processing. It's understanding now and then. You can have that with memory, and then it does some more processing, and it comes out with a result, what it wants to do. Okay, I've seen this. I compare that to memory. Now I want to do this other thing. I want to add another zero to that one and do something else. So what is it that we know that takes in information, processes it, has memory, processes it some more, and then has an output, what it wants to do? That is the basic definition of an information system. So we can think of consciousness, let me put it this way, a good way to model consciousness is with as an information system.
Let me just interrupt you there a second, Tom, if you don't mind, because I'm getting what you're saying, and I want to hear where it's going to go. But it leads to an obvious question for me, which probably is partly why I've ended up changing my understanding, which is, I think you're absolutely right, but doesn't that also point to the fact that we don't need to call it consciousness? Because we have information systems which are not conscious, who can do exactly that. So we can actually go, look, this can happen of itself without it being aware of itself or aware of anything. That can come much, much later in the process, which is what it looks like it's done. If you look at the evolutionary process, it looks like it started with basic, possibilities, information, matter, life, and then sentience, consciousness, psyche, soul. So it looks like it's come later. Do you see what I'm saying? It's like once you see that an information system can do all these things, why wouldn't you just go, well, it's an information system?
Well, because it's not just what it does. We say it can do all these things, but what it does is not just random. It just doesn't do random things.
But it's learning. It's learning.
It's learning.
But isn't that what we've got? We've got AI now, which learns. We know that so we don't need it to be conscious, is what I'm saying, for that to happen. So we can go, it's doing this unconsciously, and then it learns to do it consciously. 10 billion years into the process of learning how to do it unconsciously, it then learns, I can be a system which does it consciously. And then there's us having a conversation about the nature of the universe.
I think it has to be conscious from the beginning, because that's how it creates its patterns and gives those patterns some sort of significance. Okay, this pattern is just the opposite of that pattern. It sees significance in it. It can make comparisons between patterns.
But AI can do that as well, can't it, without being conscious?
Yes, but AI is going to be conscious.
But it's not right now.
No, some of it is. It is now. It's just not as conscious the same way that we are, and it'll never be conscious like we are. But it's conscious now, and I can tell you later how an AI becomes conscious. It probably is not the way you think, but anyway, I think you have to have the consciousness in the beginning because it's making choices. Consciousness is awareness with a choice. It's making choices of how it's going to a string, it's ones and zeros together, and what those patterns mean. And that to me defines consciousness. It's just awareness with a choice. That's
Doesn't
consciousness.
any algorithm in its essence, any this or that algorithm,
Uh-huh.
make a choice in that sense
It
of
makes a
one?
choice, but yes, it makes a choice, but it doesn't have awareness.
No,
It doesn't
exactly.
make that choice because of an awareness.
Exactly.
Consciousness makes choice because of an awareness it has. Remember, my definition of consciousness is awareness with a choice. So, yes, a computer that's not conscious makes all sorts of choices,
Yeah.
but they're all algorithmic choices. There's
Yeah.
no awareness involved in it. It's not conscious, but it needs to be aware in order to assign significance and meaning to the various patterns that it's making.
So
It's
you have a choice then, presumably, of either going, well, what we call meaning and significance, that will
Mhm.
develop much later. And what's happening what's happening at this low level is the formation of patterns.
Yeah, but
And just that, no more
but
than
it's
that.
not. No, it's more than that. It's not just random
Oh,
patterns.
not
It's not
random.
just
Well, patterns are not
no.
random, are they? But so it has to be a pattern. So it's not
Yeah,
random. So, and it could be
if it's
patterns, like you've said, forming out of randomness, like you've said with entropy. And
yeah,
so, so
if
I
it's
can
not
see
random, then it has to be conscious.
why.
It's done that for a reason. It's put them together with some meaning to itself. That pattern
If it's
now.
if it hasn't got, how can it have a reason then? Because when it's starting off with its choice, how can it
Mhm.
have a reason unless that already exists? In which case, you've got
Yeah.
consciousness, which is actually already an intelligence. It has reasons. It's not just a.
Exactly. I start with the assumption of consciousness. This little thing is conscious. It's awareness
But if
with
it's
a
choosing one of
choice.
those two, that first
Mhm.
choice is just random.
The first choice, it says a 100, and then it says a 001,
There's
and
no
then it says,
reason that
oh,
there's no reason
no,
then.
no reason there. But then it
Okay,
looks at those and
and
said
then there will be reasons.
one is the opposite of the other.
Yes.
One is in a different sequence, and then it may, make more patterns and maybe different kinds of ways, and it sees different things that it can do, and then it can take those different things and it can make them into this can stand for, I'll just say the concept like a letter, or this might stand for a number. Look, I've made 2 zeros and now here's 3 zeros. Oh, 3 zeros and two more zeros is 5 zeros. It can start making inferences and understanding relationships between these patterns that it has. And in order to do that, it has to be conscious. It has to have awareness. This pattern, that pattern, how do those patterns relate? If I add those two patterns together, I get a third pattern, you see? And
Okay.
if I break it apart in different places, I get different patterns. And then eventually this evolves, and it evolves slowly, but eventually it has patterns of patterns and things like that. And it needs consciousness to be able to do that. Without consciousness, it's just random. Oh, here's a pattern. Oh, here's another one. Oh, here's another one. It doesn't go anywhere. You need that awareness
And
to
unless
see the
there's,
relationships between patterns.
what about if, like you said, some form of memory, or what about
Mhm.
what about this as a possibility, Tom, that as information forms and it forms patterns,
Mhm.
everything that has formed in this process of forming is then conditioning what forms next. So the reason that patterns form is they become more likely to repeat, and that therefore that any pattern will form, it's more likely to repeat because it's being conditioned by the information that has formed. And then you haven't got anything. It's not necessarily to be conscious. It's simply, and it won't return to just being
Yeah,
random, because once patterns have formed, they're more likely to repeat and become more and more complex. And then you've got the whole evolutionary process
yeah,
as this forming.
yeah. I think you've kind of assumed consciousness without intending to in there.
How?
If you have something and it's forming a pattern, and if you have consciousness versus randomness. If things are random, then there is no reason why anything has to happen. It's just random. If you
Mm.
just have randomness, then you don't construct anything out of randomness. That's the nature of randomness. Nothing ever gets constructed. Things are like this, and then they're random, and they're like that, and there's some other way, and you don't actually build up patterns. You don't have anything that has meaning or significance to it. If it becomes significant that this pattern is more likely in that pattern, and I see that these patterns happen more often, and that means something to me, that's significant in some way, then that's positing consciousness. That significance of that pattern
If you see
requires
it that way,
consciousness.
but not if you go in any random information, patterns will randomly form. Now, if in the nature of the forming of the universe, everything that has formed forever, it's formed, and therefore informs what can form next, the past is conditioning what's forming new in the present in a probabilistic way. So it becomes more likely that the pattern that's formed randomly won't just disappear. It's slightly more likely to repeat. And if that happens enough time, you will form patterns. There's no consciousness, no intentionality. There's simply the forming of patterns from potentiality.
I think you can't form, if it's all random, then the patterns that you form randomly will have no meaning or significance to them. It's just random. I think there has to be a consciousness, but I don't want to get stuck on that. I think it's kind of a very minor detail.
Take me to the next step.
Let's go on. Okay. So now we have that the best model of this consciousness is as an information system. Now, imagine an information system where all the bits are random. Okay, then there is no information. That's by definition. So lowering entropy in that system creates information. All right, now, let's see where we're going to go with that. So we see then that lowering entropy is the forward direction of evolution of an information system. It tends to lower its entropy, then it understands that, but then it lowers its entropy some more, which is more order and more understanding and more assignment of meaning to different symbols and things. So all of that continues. So that builds an information system. And this information system now is conscious because I'm talking about this. We'll just let that go for a minute.
Just keep going, Thomas.
Yeah, this little unit that we started out that could remember it was in a 1 or a 0 state, and it could change that at will. It had will. It was conscious that it could do that. All right, so now we have this thing that has evolved, and it is evolving in the direction of more and more information, more and more patterns. And then it realizes that it can take one of its, we can take a cell, or we can call this a consciousness cell, if you like, that little thing we started with, and it can just go 0, 1, 0, 1, 0, 1 regularly, and that makes a metronome, and now we have time. So time is like the first technology that comes out of this. And now you can make sequences of patterns and patterns of sequences, and you have another dimension of possibilities come into your ordering of things and giving that ordering some sort of a meaning. Now that system continues to evolve, and I would just speculate that in that evolution, it would probably very naturally learn mathematics. It's got two 1s or 3 1s, and together they're 5 1s, and mathematics would just kind of fall out of this as a natural set of patterns to follow. And mathematics is basically the logic of quantity. That's all mathematics is. That's why mathematics really fits the physical world, because the physical world is all about quantity, and mathematics is the logic of quantity. So anyway, so you get this system that grows and evolves with more complexity, more understanding, more awareness. And it gets to a point where it starts to slow down its evolution because it's kind of done all the things that it can think of to do. So the next step for it to take is that it'll take a piece of itself. Now, if you think of information system, we call that a virtual machine. It takes a piece of itself, just a subset of itself, which has a subset of its processing, a subset of its memory, and so on. and calls that an individuated unit of consciousness. And because it's separate, it has free will as well. It can make choices.
When,
If you don't
when
have,
when is this? Is this during the evolution of the universe? Are we talking? Do you have a time
no, we have
exists?
no, yeah, we don't have universe yet.
Okay, so this is
Our
before all of
universe,
that.
yeah, this is before a universe. This is
Okay,
just consciousness
but
evolving.
okay, we got time, but no
Okay.
universe.
Yeah, just conscious evolving. And you always had time because that first thing of this awareness with a choice, you have to have time before the choice, after the choice. You can't have choice without time.
Didn't, but I thought you said that time came from the one and the zero, going
That's
alternately like a
regular
metric.
time. That's regular time.
Oh,
You
okay.
have just time, like
So,
primordial time,
so
if
is
you
that
want.
another assumption that there's time?
Now, I'm saying that that is a um, just another set of possibilities that the system can come up with. It can realize that time is there because it's before and after the choice. There's always time, but it's not a regular time that you can count on. So you can't really sequence things very, very well. So it just can create regular time
So
by,
there's consciousness. It has a binary choice. It will
Mhm,
remember its choice,
mhm.
and there's time, which is the choice.
The time is, again, it's a logical requirement for choice. So when you say it's awareness with a choice, then you logically get you logically get time with that. So
Okay. Okay.
think of this. Consciousness, time, and free will are all logically necessary for each other. You can't have one without the others. You can't have a choice if there's no free will, because if there's no free will, there are no choices. So
What do you mean by free will, Tom?
free will is if you have the number of choices that you have, you come to some point and you see that there are five things that you might do in response to something. Okay. You have
Mhm.
these five different paths you could take. You have the free will to choose one of those five. Now, it may be that there's 20 different things you could do, but you are only aware of five of them. Your free will is just to make a choice among the options that you have
So
at any
if
given
you have the
time.
two options of a binary
Mhm.
choice,
Right. Then you have to have free will. If you
presumably the
choose them.
free bit means it's not determined by
Right.
anything.
It's yeah, it's a free choice. It's a one or a
What's the
zero. And
difference between that, given that you've got no reasons to choose anything, because there's no reasons
mhm.
yet? What's the difference between that and randomness? And so why isn't it
Well,
right to go in the beginning, there's consciousness and it's random?
because it starts with an awareness that it can be in state one and state two.
Okay.
That awareness,
But on what basis can it have a choice if it's not?
well, it has to choose whether it's going to be in a one or two. That
But
comes
but if you go, look,
with the
there's something in this
definition
hand,
of
there's something in this hand, and
consciousness.
you don't know what they are, then it's like it's just random, isn't it? You just, oh well, go for the left. I mean, it's like
Well,
in what way is that free
yes.
will at the beginning? Why is that will? Why is it willing something?
Let's say
I'm just trying to
it.
understand what you mean by.
Okay, it came with the definition. It's an awareness with a choice.
Yep.
So it's an awareness. It chooses a one or a zero.
Okay.
Now, the initial choice is probably random. It
Random.
doesn't
Okay.
matter. It doesn't matter what it chooses,
Okay.
but it chooses something,
Yep.
and then it can choose something else again, and then it can
Yep.
says, "Oh, these are both the same," or "Oh,
Yep.
no, these are different,"
Yep.
and then it can work. It can evolve up from that point. So the very first choice is probably random. It doesn't matter,
Okay.
but after it makes a choice, then there's a relationship between that and
The other
some
choice,
other choice that it can make, and it starts building up these relationships and
because
into
it's aware of
patterns and
both
so on.
possibilities. It's
Yeah.
aware of what they are.
Yes,
So when it
exactly.
chooses one, it's
That's
also aware of zero.
that's because it has memory. Exactly.
But even if I mean, presumably the first time, I'm not trying to be pernickety here. I'm trying to understand what you're saying. So that the choice, it must be aware of what both of those choices are to choose one, presumably.
Yeah, it has an awareness that it's in one of two states. Right.
Okay.
So I can
So
be
it
in
knows
state
both of those
one.
states.
Yeah, it knows both of them. It's aware of them that it can choose.
Okay.
Okay, and it has the free will to do so.
Okay.
And there is time. Otherwise, there would be no choice.
Yeah. And there's
So
memory because otherwise there'd be no patterns.
otherwise, there'd be nothing to it. It would be the zero, level of nothing. It could go nowhere and do nothing.
Right.
except randomly fire, but it doesn't ever accumulate into anything. So
Right.
you have to have memory for it to be a meaningful consciousness,
See,
a
I think what
significant
you've done, which is
consciousness.
really interesting, don't get me wrong. I mean, it's very interesting. And maybe I haven't understood it quite, and that's probable. But it looks like what you've done is not deduce the picture from consciousness, but actually the opposite way around. You've gone, these are all to come up with the universe, you must go
Hmm.
back and back and back and have these qualities
Hmm.
because it couldn't have formed in this way unless there was. So rather than starting with from consciousness, we can deduce this. It feels like
Right.
you've told a story, which is an interesting story, which is really a way of trying to account for this. If you were to start with consciousness and then go, well, we must have this, otherwise, and we must have this, and we must have
Yeah.
this, and we must have this, which is a kind of the opposite in a way.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
deducing
Yeah.
backwards.
That's right. I'm starting with what's the simplest piece of consciousness that could exist, and then from that, I'm letting that evolve into the more, into the bigger
So, and
consciousness
then you're
that has a
telling a
lot more
story about
choices.
how that could happen.
Yes, I'm telling a story about how that could happen.
Okay.
Now, it slows down because it's one monolithic thing, and it makes this piece subsets of itself, and they have free will because it has free will and it makes choices, and it's just doing what it does. It's just another smaller subset of itself. Well, it does that because now the possibilities that it has to evolve into have enlarged greatly. Because if it makes these individuated units of consciousness, they must have their own free will. Now you have the potential for an argument. You have the potential for different points of view. And whenever you get different points of view, there's a lot more possibilities because just one monolithic thing is kind of limited by its own oneness, and then you have different points of view. Okay, so that gives it more room to evolve further. So it does that, and it makes lots of these things. And the first virtual reality that the system creates is just communication protocols. So all of these individuated units of consciousness can communicate with the larger system and with each other. And a virtual reality is defined simply as a rule set. It's a rule
Why is
set
it virtual rather than a reality?
because it's just made up. It's a way of organizing. It's not, you know, well, just let me go with that name,
Okay,
but it's
okay, yeah,
just
yeah, no, you're
it
fine. I just wanted to know
it's
if there
just
was a
made up. Yeah,
significant.
a
Yeah,
virtual reality is a created reality, something that wasn't there before, but you set up a bunch of rules.
yeah, yeah,
Here's the communication
yeah,
protocols.
yeah,
Here's the
yeah,
rules.
yeah,
Now everybody uses these rules,
yeah.
then we're part of this reality that uses these rules.
Got it.
And people outside of this reality don't use these rules and they're not part of our club. You see, it's that sort of thing.
Okay,
So that's the virtual reality because it's a created reality.
okay.
Now, so you have that virtual reality, and it turns out it's like a huge chat room, right? These things are all interacting with each other. But the whole point of this game is to evolve. And we've just established that the way consciousness evolves is by lowering its entropy. And it does that through creating good choices, better choices, interesting choices that it makes with its memory and its things that it can do. All right. So that turned out to spark the evolution a bit, but then it also plateaued again out shortly because being in a big chat room doesn't create a lot of real interesting choices. It gets to be very limited in its choices. So the second virtual reality that it created was another reality that would have a very tight rule set that would force choices, very interesting choices. And what it did is it took a set of initial conditions and a rule set. That's how you make virtual realities. You have initial conditions and a rule set. And we talked about the rule set before, but the initial conditions just gives you some place to start.
Mhm.
Okay, so the initial conditions were this ball of plasma, very high energy, very high temperature, high pressure, and the rule set is how that would change over time. So you punch the button and it starts to evolve. Okay, I call this the big digital bang. You recognize it from the big bang that the physicists have. So it's the big digital bang. And this takes place then within this larger conscious system, which is an information system, and it can configure part of itself. This information system can configure part of itself as the computer. It basically just tracks things, what happens next within itself. So there's part of it that is computing this, and it starts to evolve and it falls apart, doesn't work. So it changes the initial conditions a little bit, changes the rule set a little bit, hits the run button again. And it does this over and over. And pretty soon it's like big digital bang, take 10,000, and it's doing this. That's how those numbers all get tuned to one another in that, anthropomorphic cosmology. It gets tuned because this happens until it finally gets all the numbers just right. Gravity's not too big and it's not too small. It's just right. And you have something that continues for a long time because it's stable. And it's not easy to get that stability. It takes a lot of tries. So you get a stable universe, and that universe creates suns and planets, and this is our reality. And now this is a virtual reality. And the virtual reality evolves. It evolves single-celled things and multi-celled things, and they follow the same kind of structure in that what they do is they lower their entropy. If they're a single-celled thing, now they become a multi-celled thing, and there's more they can do. There's more flexibility in those multiple cells than there was in a single cell. So that lowers the entropy. So our evolution is really also moving toward lowering entropy, more complex forms that are survivable within our criteria in this virtual reality is that we survive and procreate. That's what it is. So then it lowers its entropy within those constraints. So that's how the universe is built, and it's built as a entropy reduction trainer for these individuated units of consciousness, because eventually it develops something like us. Okay, the humans are there. Now, the larger conscious system encourages its individuated units of consciousness to log on and play those evolved characters in this simulation, and they do. The player is the component that makes all the choices for the avatar. So the avatar now is a human body in this simulation, this virtual reality. The consciousness is the player, makes all the choices for its avatar. And that's just like virtual reality games that we have. They all work the same way. The player makes all the choices. The computer, which is the larger consciousness system or a subset of it, computes all the things, the interactions, and it's basically a data exchange between the player and the computer, between the individuated units of consciousness and the larger consciousness system. So this exchange is constantly taking place with data, and it creates this reality. Now, because of this rule set being a tight rule set where everything that happens has a very strict energy exchange, reason. The rule set's called science. That's what scientists do. They try to figure out what the rules are in this virtual reality. So now there's lots of very meaningful, consequential choices to make, not just a big chat room. Now you've got a space in which these individuated units of consciousness have, life and death choices to be nice and helpful, or choices to be self-centered and fearful. And according to how they choose, then they evolve or de-evolve the quality of their consciousness. So this is how consciousness evolves. It evolves toward lower entropy. Lower entropy is more order, more useful forms. Okay. So now I can make a really strong deductive leap to where I'm going next, but if you want to go back and do the detail, I will. But that basically it's easy to see, and that is in a social system, the low entropy choice is the choice of cooperation. It's a choice of caring. It's a choice of working together. It's a choice of what can we say, compassion. All of those things are low entropy things. It helps everybody work together and all the boats float together. On the opposite side is, and I call that the love side. The opposite side is the fear side. The fear side is always very self-centered because fear is just about self. Fear is a
Is
self
it?
thing. Yeah.
I get
Fear,
frightened for my daughter. Is that
yeah, but
because I love her?
we
Is
can
that
go
about
into,
self?
yes, it
I
is.
would sacrifice myself for the fear that I
Of,
fear for my daughter's safety.
of course you would.
Isn't so? Is
Yeah.
that self?
Yeah. Let's go back to that in just a minute.
Okay.
I don't want to get too far derailed
Okay.
here,
Okay.
but we
Okay.
will go back to that. Okay. So,
I hear the love versus fear thing a lot. It never makes any sense to me.
okay. So then we have the fear side where it's
Okay.
self-centered. It's all about me. And if you have fear and it's all about you, then you don't trust. And, you tend to want to grab what you need to grab, and then you have to have the power to keep what it is you've grabbed and so on. And that ends up being, kind of the dysfunctional side. That's de-evolution. The evolution side is consideration, caring, and so on. So that's our point. We come into this virtual reality entropy reduction trainer in order to make choices so that we can evolve our consciousness, lower our entropy, or evolve a higher quality of consciousness. That's kind of the game. So that then says that this is a virtual reality. Because it's a virtual reality, it's digital, it's computed. That's why the speed of light's a constant, because you can only move one pixel of
Well
distance,
done, sir. Well done.
one pixel of distance for one pixel of time, right? That's as fast as you can go through this virtual reality without, without teleporting, without jumping across
That's
pixels.
impressive to end up to
Yeah,
remember that that's what we were deducing. Well done. That's
yeah,
fantastic.
yeah. So that is why speed of light's constant. That's as fast as you can go. Now, every virtual reality has a maximum speed that things can move within that reality. So that's
That's
just part of
incredible.
being the virtual reality. Now, also, this virtual reality, it will turn out, has to be computed with probability.
Hmm.
And that's just a good, uh, the reason for that is it just makes sense from a view of computer science. It's just more efficient. And it's more efficient because the rule set is well known to the system. It created the rule set that created this virtual reality. So the virtual reality is based on the rule set. And if you know all the rules, it's easy to produce very accurate probability distributions about if you do this, what does the rule say about, the probability of what's going to happen next? So to do anything else, to try to compute it from the smallest particle up, or something like that, is just ridiculous. It doesn't. It'd be terribly inefficient. Uh, so that's maybe another assumption I make, is that this information system is going to grow in a way that's efficient for itself. It is an aware, intelligent, conscious information system. It's not going to be stupid about doing things inefficiently. So I would say that that just kind of goes with what I've got so far. So it's going to make these more intelligent choices, and it can do everything it needs to do in terms of probability at 1 millionth the effort, and 10 and a million times the speed. It's and I was in the simulation business for a long time, so I know that very well the difference between a statistical simulation versus what I call a physics simulation, starting from the particles and going up. And the problem with those is that in the statistical simulations, their weak point is nobody really knows what those probability distributions are. So they start guessing at things. Oh, it's probably just Gaussian, and that's not true. But in this case, the system knows all of the details because it owns the rule set. So it knows exactly how things will work at the rules. So now let's let's just go grab another one of those low-hanging fruit. The the resolution that it's going to have, has a limit, and the limit is the delta x and delta t, the small units of time, that in a simulation, any dynamic simulation, every delta t, you recalculate the positions and what's going on with everything. So that resolution is called, the delta x is called the Planck length, and the delta t is the Planck time. You divide the Planck length by the Planck time, you get the speed of light. Okay, so that's one delta x for every delta t. That's the speed of light. That's as fast as things go. All right, now, it's not going to compute everything at that very, very high resolution. That would be silly, because it's there for us humans to act and interact and make choices, or at least our consciousness is going to make those choices for those avatars. And it can use a much less resolution. And very, very often, simulations are made that way. For this piece, if we're just going to, let's say, model a man running through the woods, we only need a resolution of, say, 1/10 of a second, and everything looks smooth. If we're going to model a missile flying at Mach 5, we need a much finer resolution, because it changes, it would hop from one place to another place in 1/10 of a second. So it only computes at the resolution that it needs. And every once in a while, it has to change the resolution, because we individuated units of consciousness playing these humans, we've gotten to the point where we can dig deeper and deeper into the nature of our reality. So the resolution has to go up to support the needs of the simulation.
Can I ask you a question with the simulation idea? That so the universe that we can see with the Hubble telescope, is that, in your mind, is that obviously it's all being informed by the conditions that make it work in this particular way.
Right.
But in this big mind, has it created that universe? Is it there? I mean, in any sense, or is it, if it's all been done for us, why the extravagance? Why not just a canopy over the earth, or why all that?
It's not extravagant at all, because like in all modern virtual realities, you only compute what the players can see.
So that's kind of just like hardly, it's just it's not really there until we go looking, and then it appears.
Exactly. If you go looking, then
if you go looking, it'll come, but otherwise it's not really there.
It does not have to be computed. Neither does a brain in my head have to be computed. I can function as if I had a brain, because it's all based on probability.
But it's there when you look.
Yeah, if you cut a head open, you're going to find one.
But why bother to have a brain in there if it doesn't do anything?
Oh, because you have to show something when somebody's head gets cut open.
Why?
You can't open somebody's head and find a black hole or a void.
Why?
Because it's a virtual reality.
Well, you could have you don't have to have a brain, something that complex. You could have a big lump of margarine. You could have anything, couldn't you?
No, you have to have something that is in consonance with the rule set. See, we all evolved here with this rule set. And
so the brain is there as a way of just keeping the consistency with the rule set. It's not actually doing anything. It's just to give the impression that it's doing something.
Yeah, and it has to be inconsistent. It has to be consistent with the rule set.
Does that seem plausible to you, Tom?
Oh, absolutely. All virtual realities are made that way. Every virtual reality that exists in our games is made exactly like that.
But they are actually virtual realities. They're mimicking reality. So they're trying to pretend that it's reality.
Yeah,
the actual reality doesn't have to, it's not mimicking anything.
No, it just is a virtual reality. Because
well, it's not virtual, is it? It's real. So it's not simulating anything, though. I'm going with your model for a second, but it's not simulating something else, because there is nothing for it to simulate. It is what it is. So why would it need to pretend that there's a big, incredibly complex lump of organic matter in your head, which you can do stuff to and make it all do stuff, or you can put, and yet it's not really there. It's not really doing anything.
Because
why bother to do that?
For consistency, it would be a terrible virtual reality if you didn't have consistency. If you were playing, a game with The Sims, and you were a brain doctor with The Sims, and you opened up a skull.
But that's mimicking the fact that the brain, that most people would imagine the
Yeah.
brain is doing something of
Mhm.
significance.
But it has to be according to the rule set so that as the people get smarter and smarter, they learn more and more about the brain. They learn how to take MRIs of it and other things, and they poke this and it does that. It all has to follow with what has evolved. It has to be in consonance, with the rule set. It has to be credible. It has to be it all has to hold together. Otherwise, it's a terrible, if you were a Sims character and you were a brain surgeon and you split open a skull and
But
and
here's the problem with what
a
you're
bunch of
saying.
little marbles jumped out, that wouldn't
But
make any sense.
well, it only doesn't make sense because we live in a reality where we can see that organic matter has evolved and brain is playing
Right.
a role in that.
Exactly.
But it needn't be that way. It could have evolved that we opened it up and found marbles and we're just like, yeah, marbles. So what
Yeah.
did you expect?
No,
We always find
that wouldn't
marbles.
that wouldn't compute. It wouldn't be rational. Marbles aren't
Don't what?
capable of making decisions and choices, but
But
we
you
are.
but
So the brain has to be
but you said the brain wasn't doing
reflected.
anything. It was not
No,
really there.
the brain isn't doing anything, but it has to look like it is for
So why
this to
couldn't it be
be a
marbles
real,
that look like it is?
because that would not be consistent with the rule set. You're not going to evolve the human being with marbles in their head. That doesn't compute. You've
Why?
evolved this. Why? It's
If actually the brain isn't doing anything,
right.
and I haven't got one until I look,
Uh-huh.
why is it consistent for it to be a brain rather than anything?
Well,
Because it's not
it's
doing anything.
yeah,
So anything could be consistent.
it's nothing at all when you don't cut a skull open and look at it.
Yeah,
It's not rendered at all.
right.
Only rendered what you look at. But if you do cut one open, what you see has to be consistent with the rule set that evolved all of this. There's a rule set which evolved our universe, our planet, one cell to multi-cell to
Okay,
human
okay,
beings.
okay.
All of that is part of an evolved system that depends
But
on the rule set, which is science.
until someone had, it just feels really implausible. This, Tom. If you had a why would the brain develop at all or anything like that? In fact, if no one was looking at brains for before there was human beings, for instance, or to do that, why would, if the rule set is not actually doing anything, actually it's all actually something else,
But
why would it evolve that way?
the rule set is what determines how things evolve. There are rules. We call that biology.
But
We
why?
call it physics. We
But
call it
biology
chemistry.
works because it's all doing something. So the brain, according to evolutionary
No.
biology,
This is in
the view would be
this.
the brain is evolved that way because it is evolutionary advantage
We're talk.
to have this function. But you're saying it's
Yeah.
not doing anything.
Now, this is a simulation. Okay,
Of
the
what?
big digital simulation.
Of what?
It
What's it
it has a.
simulating?
It's going to simulate a virtual reality, a reality that is
So it's
only
simulating
exists.
itself. It's simulating itself. It's not really a
No,
simulation of anything.
no, 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 no. You have a larger consciousness system. It wants to create a virtual reality that provides choices for its
Yep.
individuated units. It
Yep.
starts with initial conditions and a rule set,
Yep.
which is the big digital bang. And that rule set is biology, chemistry, physics, all the rules.
But
Now, that that
how do you
that
account then for biological evolution as we're talking about that?
because that's what the rules require.
But biological evolution, the understanding of that every
Hmm.
biologist has, which of course may be wrong, of course,
Uh-huh.
but that is that it sets up variations and variations which benefit the system continue.
Exactly.
But if the brain's not doing anything, why would those variations evolve?
They're part of the simulation. They're part of
But
the
they're not
rule
doing
set.
anything. So what's the incentive for them to evolve?
They're creating a virtual reality.
Yes,
This,
but
yes,
if
things.
the first time a nervous system develops,
Uh-huh.
the idea would be that that system now has an advantage over a system without one, and therefore it will survive and do well. But if the
Right.
nervous system isn't doing anything, and how do you even know it's evolved? Because unless you looked at it, it wouldn't be
No.
there.
you're missing the concept of the virtual reality. You see,
Okay. Okay.
there is you have a virtual reality.
Yep.
It starts, let's say, and we have this Earth and we have a cell.
Yep.
Okay. Now, the system is going to look at that. It has certain pressures, which are survival and
Yep.
procreation.
Yep.
So within those things, there's some certain options that it can take, certain things that happen. And when they happen in this way, then the system computes them doing this.
But you've
So
just
the
said that
system
the evolution,
looks at
the brain's not actually there.
maybe this will help you.
Okay.
The way the system moves forward is that there are a set of possibilities.
Yep.
So let's say we have this virtual reality and there's a set of possibilities. We got a single-celled thing. There's a set of possibilities. Now, what happens next is that each possibility has a probability. Okay. Now, the system takes a random draw from the probability distribution of the possibilities, and that's what happens next. That's what it renders. So
but it's not rendering the brain of the very first systems with brains unless they look inside their heads.
No, it renders that brain because it's part of the virtual reality. It's just a computing.
But
this whole reality is computed in a computer, and the evolution says that, okay, it's going to create a brain. That's one of the possibilities. So the brain will develop there.
So it does have a brain.
As a possibility, there's a possibility that this jellyfish or whatever it is going to create a brain. That's one of the possibilities. Now that random draw says, aha, okay, that's the way it's going to go. And here's the brain it's going to do. So then it renders that brain.
But only if you look inside its head.
Only if you are a character within the virtual reality and you look inside its head. That's a character in the virtual reality.
If another animal looking inside another animal's head, the brain wouldn't see anything.
No, it's just
sorry.
The virtual reality, the virtual reality generates on its own. It follows evolution, and evolution evolves within that virtual reality because of the rules and the rule set. So the rule set allows eventually a brain to form, and that rule set eventually allows multiple species to form, and so on.
But you've just said the brain doesn't do anything.
No, there is no brain. There is no brain. It's all computed in a computer.
Well, all right, or even a computed brain in the virtual reality. Surely you can't have it both ways. Surely you can't have it that my head has not got a brain in until somebody looks inside, and it's not really doing anything, and the system has evolved to forward things that work and possibilities that seem worth negotiating, and that brains have formed in octopi or early whatever reptiles, and no one's looking inside them.
I see.
And you can't have it that only when game players look
Okay.
inside them does it exist, and also have animals look inside them and go, oh, look,
You're forgetting the consciousness. The individuated unit of consciousness is playing that character and making all of its choices. So that character can choose.
But that's not the octopus, right?
That's what?
It's not playing the octopus, or is it?
Yes, there would be a part of that consciousness playing and not playing the octopus.
Okay, so that's the individuated consciousness as well.
Yeah.
So how far down does the individuated consciousness go?
Well,
in the animal world?
That depends. It goes to a point that there is one being and one individuated consciousness down where that is practical. If you get something like a colony of ants, you may have one consciousness making choices for multiple things.
Okay, but that's still a game player.
Yeah, still the game player. So everything that's conscious, dogs, cats, horses, bumblebees, everything that's conscious is conscious because it has an individuated unit of consciousness doing it individually or as a
So is there a difference between the individuated unit of consciousness in Tom and the individuated consciousness that's a colony of ants, or are they the same?
No, they're not the same. Consciousness comes in, individuated units of consciousness comes in all different levels and sizes of capacity.
So what are the qualities or what are the characteristics which enables you to go, that's a different type of individuated consciousness? If it's separate from the thing that it's conscious of, what is that abstract consciousness different to the other abstract consciousness?
the system itself, remember, creates these individuated units of consciousness to serve a purpose,
Yeah.
right?
Okay.
So they're out experiencing. They have free will. They make
Yeah.
choices.
Yeah.
They evolve by the quality of their choices. So they can make an individuated unit. It can make an individual unit of consciousness that makes the choices for a chimpanzee or a dog
Sure, but if the individuated
or
consciousness is not the chimpanzee, actually, it's the individuated consciousness.
right,
And if the
makes all the
individuated consciousness is not Tim, it's this abstract thing, individuated consciousness.
right.
It must, and they are not the same. Then the individuated consciousness must have different qualities to it. It can't be just they can't be the same if
No,
they're
they all evolve. Each one evolves in its own way. Every
so it's
individuated consciousness has free will and it makes its own
so
choices for
what
its own
makes it
reasons.
what qualities does it have as opposed to the system that it's virtually its avatar? What qualities does the individuated consciousness have that it is able to evolve or to learn? What are the qualities it has as well as being conscious?
Well, it's conscious. Consciousness can evolve.
Yeah,
It
but
can
what?
it can
How? I mean,
learn.
it's it,
It learns. It makes choices, and
so it's
by those
like an
choices,
intelligence system.
yes, of course. So
Okay,
it
so that's
makes
different to being conscious, isn't it? That's another big quality to it. That it's in an intelligence is different to being something which, like if you go to the Eastern traditions, they've got this idea, haven't they? They've just consciousness it's just a presence of awareness. So what you're saying is it's more like an intelligence.
well, it's conscious awareness that is intelligent.
Okay,
It makes choices, and by those choices, sometimes the choices are good choices, sometimes
okay.
they're bad choices. So it can be aware of that and becomes more and more intelligent as it makes
Okay. So
choices.
like an evolving, so each one's in a different evolving intelligence system. So
Yes.
when it's first put into the system, does it already have those qualities? I mean, you talked about it being like, going, oh, we've got human beings now, so that we'll encourage the individuated systems to become human. So
Yeah.
presumably was doing that before with single-celled life or with
Yeah.
basic life and
You're right. It can take a little piece of itself and make that an individuated unit for playing a dog or a bumblebee. And
or
it can take
anything.
a little piece of itself and make it for a human to play that. So it's going to make a piece of individuated consciousness that's appropriate for,
And
for
so
the
at that
avatar
stage,
that
it's
it's
just
going
like
to.
drop it in, and it will develop and evolve in that way. Drop it over there, it will evolve in that way, like that sort of thing.
Yes, so every individual unit of consciousness evolves is on its own path to
Right.
evolving or de-evolving based on the choices that it makes, the things it learns, and how it grows. Right. So we're all individuals. We're all pieces of consciousness. We're all we all are making choices. It's in this consciousness is where the memory is. It's in this consciousness where choices are being made.
Yeah.
It's the animated thing.
Yeah.
Now, this consciousness is you can call it our spirit, it's our soul. We kind of have that idea as humans that there's this non-physical part of us that is functional. Well, that's our consciousness. That's our piece of consciousness. It's part of this larger consciousness system. Okay, so the thing is, if you continue this, and where I was going to go with it
Sure. Yeah.
earlier was
Please do.
that if you have this system and it is at a certain resolution, it's being computed, virtual reality, you want to have it at a resolution that is useful, not so high that you're wasting bits in the computer and not so low that things are hopping around. So you want it to be the right thing. And as people grow and dig into our reality more, then you have to keep lowering that resolution, making it finer and finer. Well, that's happened. And guess what? In physicists will tell you, the physicists that keep track of things like the speed of light will tell you that the speed of light has changed out in the eighth or ninth decimal place 4 or 5 times. Well, but we can compute or we can measure the speed of light out to 15 decimal places, and this is only in like the eighth or ninth. So it's a real change. Why does that happen? because when the resolution has to be deepened, because humans are digging deeper into this virtual reality, so the virtual reality needs to be higher res for them, you can't change the delta T to be anything you want. It comes in units. It's delta T's. So if you want to, let's say, take the resolution and you want to make it twice as much resolution, so you could make delta X 1/2 as big, and you can make delta T 1/2 as big. Now you've got double the resolution. Your pixels now are smaller by 1/2, okay? But you can't take a digital thing and actually just divide it by 2. You can do that and you can say, well, that's just a little smaller than the next pixel and a little bigger than the last pixel. So it's closest to the next pixel. So we'll say there. So you get it to the closest pixel you can to that number. And that's in the 8th or 9th decimal place. That tells you about where our resolution was before it was changed. So that's...
So does the system, does the big system want us to recognize that this is a virtual reality and that when we're doing physics, we're creating rather than discovering? Does it want us to know that? Or is it hiding that from us?
No, it wants us to know that, but it would like us to understand that, because that's understanding spirituality. That's understanding why you're here. That's understanding that love is the answer rather than fear is the answer. That caring is better than force. That's what it would like you to understand. So in as much as it wants to keep the virtual reality, has to be real. The players have to be feeling like they're in a real game. So
but wouldn't it? I mean, for instance, if we looked into something or just we looked in someone's head for maybe even that example would do, and we just went, bloody hell, there's nothing here, and it was like, oh, this is the virtual reality, because we're ready to think that now. Wouldn't that serve its purpose very, very well? Wouldn't it go, it's not consistent, and that shows its nature, and that we'd have to question everything, and then we might wake to spirituality, and wouldn't that work?
And that happens. It happens some.
Yeah, but you'd think it would happen a lot, wouldn't you? If the system wants us to get that, surely it would be very simple for it to go, look, here it is.
What the system wants us to get is that love is where we're evolving to, and that is the answer.
Well, how about that? You open someone's head, and there's a little plaque which is all written up, just goes, look, love is the answer. You need to get that. I mean, if for a week every brain surgeon opened someone's head and found a message instead saying love is the answer, the whole world would just go, what the hell? This is huge.
Right. Yeah. And it doesn't want the whole world to go something like that. It wants the world to understand it. Growing up has to take one step at a time. We have to get to step A before we get to step B.
But surely it would be a big jump, wouldn't it? I mean, it would be just huge. If on the news there was that, everyone would be questioning and thinking about their lives, and
it does that, but it does that in a way that we can deal with. For instance, there are people who actually have no brain. They have maybe a little tiny of a lining around the inside of their skull.
I agree, but that's different. I mean,
they're working on their master's degree in mathematics.
I know. I've written about the same guy. It's very interesting. And I do think that's significant to try and understand about. Really important. But this is something else. That, that questions our current understanding of the nature of the brain. It really does. And if we had more time, we could get into that, because that's fascinating. But what I'm trying to get into is, with your theory, why this computer, this intelligence, which is running the whole thing, doesn't just go, hey guys, look, with anything. Why doesn't it write, it's like Hitchhiker's Guide. Why doesn't it write a huge message across the sky? If everyone woke up in the morning and and there was a huge message which just went, wake up guys, this is all about love, the whole world would change instantly. Now, we'd still have to evolve, but everyone would be going, bloody hell.
No, it wouldn't be a good thing. It would create more chaos. It would create more chaos than it would create helpful. You have to learn you have to learn in a progression. For instance, it's a fact that you can use your intent to modify future probability. And what happens next depends on that future probability. So you can use your mind to heal, to do these other things that modify future probability. You can use your mind to
I
make,
need to return you to explain to me why
yeah,
this supercomputer that has the power to do that doesn't do it.
okay, I'm in the process of that.
Okay,
Okay, so
sorry.
there's a lot of things that you can do with your mind, and
Sure.
that would be
I,
part of that process.
I agree.
It would not be useful for everyone in the state that we are now, at the level of entropy that we are now, which is not very evolved, for them to all understand that they could use their mind to put ideas in other people's heads,
But that's not doing that though,
to
Tom, is it?
heal or to hurt. No,
Just going, it's about love. It's not telling people that. It's just going,
no,
love's a
we
good
have
thing.
exactly. We have
Everyone
to.
would instantly believe there's a bigger intelligence because it's
Mhm.
just written a message across the sky. Everyone
That
would know
would
it was a virtual reality because that could only happen in a virtual reality. The whole of humanity would take a massive jump forward within a second. Why would it
no,
not do that?
it wouldn't do that because you don't. Taking a jump forward doesn't depend on what you know intellectually.
Well,
It
it'd be more than
depends
it,
on,
it wouldn't just be intellectual, would it? It would challenge everyone to consider in a whole new way. Now, it wouldn't
yes,
instantly make everyone a saint, but surely it would challenge everyone. There would be no, the world could not be the same.
yes, the world would not be the same, but it wouldn't necessarily be a better place. People
Oh,
grow up one step at a time. You have to change who you are from the inside out. We call that spiritual growth. You don't get that because you read a book. Oh, I read a book about spiritual growth. Now I'm grown up.
of course.
So getting this message across at the intellectual level, oh, I've written across the sky. Well, that'll affect people's intellects. It won't change them one bit at their core. Most people,
Really?
yes.
If I walked out here and I saw a big message written across the sky going, "Hey Tim, this is a message from the
Yes.
big mind that Tom was talking about." If I
Mhm.
went and looked and the stars formed that
Mhm.
tonight when I walked out there, you say surely that would have the most enormous effect on anyone.
It
You'd
would
just
have
tell
a,
everyone from the rest of your life. You'd be going, "You can't believe what happened. I've been talking to this guy Tom Campbell. I walked outside and there
no,
was a cosmic message for me written in the stars."
no, yeah.
It would be like the most ginormous. When people often talk about spirituality, one of the things that they often relate is those magical, synchronous, all of that stuff,
Mhm.
which
Exactly.
I'm sure we both think is real. So if there was a power that could just create the most
Mhm.
massive synchronous event,
Mhm.
which would affect everyone in that
Mhm.
magical way, why wouldn't it do it?
Because it would create more chaos. Okay, for you, you go out and have an epiphany of a great understanding. Somebody else would say, oh, God is angry with us. Somebody else would say, oh, they make up all kinds of things. If you're not ready to grow up, you don't suddenly leap from having a low quality of consciousness to having a lot of fear in your life and being very negative and self-centered. You don't suddenly become love because you saw something written in the sky. It doesn't work that way. People would be terrified by it. People would think it was the end of the earth. People would be running and digging holes to hide in. It would create a lot of dysfunction.
How about if
It
it
wouldn't
said
take it.
brackets? Don't worry, it's not the end of the earth. It's just the beginning of a better world.
Yeah, and they say that's a lie to trick us. That's
Someone
just
would.
something to, frightened people are going to be frightened. They'll make up a scary story. The aliens did that. They're going to come and eat us next week. It
Yeah,
would
maybe.
create it would create havoc. It wouldn't create understanding. Why doesn't if God wants us all to become love, why doesn't he write that in the sky? Well, it's because it's not functional to do that. We have to grow ourselves up from wherever it is we are. We have to change who we are. That's the point. The
Yeah.
point is for us to evolve,
I agree.
and you
I agree. I
can't
mean,
you,
look,
you can't
I agree
skip
with that.
steps.
I agree
Yeah.
with that.
You can't skip steps, and you can't. People aren't going to evolve in a leap because of something they get inside their intellect that isn't just changing the quality of their being. They're still going to have that same quality, and if they're fearful, they'll make up a fearful story about that big love heart in the sky. That will be a sign of the devil coming to, reap with the Grim Reaper. That'll be the aliens coming to eat us. It'll be fearful people will make something fearful out of it. It doesn't work to do that. You have to grow from where you are to the next step, to the next
I
step.
mean, I mean,
Taking
I think
you're ready. You're ready to take those giant leaps, okay? But most people are not in that position. So anyway, my point was that
yeah, go on.
here's another paradox of why does the speed of light change in an eighth decimal place every
Yeah, yeah,
so often,
yeah, yeah. It's
and
interesting.
it has no answer.
Okay,
Nobody has a clue. Well, that's why, because the resolution is changed every once in a while to
okay.
suit us, and that's what we need. And there's actually about 30 of these kinds of things, the speed of light, the speed of light changing, all these things that you get answers out
You
of
just brought it
this.
back to the speed of light
And
again. That's
yeah,
doubly
and
impressive.
that gets us
Very
that gets
good.
us now to the point of why would I take this path where I posit this consciousness system instead of just it's just relational. It kind of bubbles up and becomes what it is.
No,
Because
no,
by
no,
taking
just relational doesn't do that justice,
Okay,
Tom.
it doesn't do that justice. I'm sorry, but the other way that you said, I'm not
Yeah.
voicing it very well, but the reason is that when I do it this way, I can logically build up a system that starts with the consciousness cell that just can choose between a one and a zero, and logically create a system in which I can solve a whole lot of mysteries in science. I can solve a whole lot of mysteries in metaphysics, and I can solve a whole lot of mysteries in theology because obviously this larger consciousness system is what everybody calls God. And, it is, I can even explain how it is in Christianity or just actually in history that we have the Old Testament with an angry, jealous God and a New Testament where God is love. How did that come across? Well, I can explain how that happened. You see,
So
logically.
that's the
So that's the reason for going that method is that
I understand. I
you
understand.
get this huge fallout of understanding that explains a whole lot of mysteries with solid, logical, scientific reasoning. Whereas if you go the other way, you can get to that other way, but it just kind of starts out of nothing and just all kind of gels together and becomes what it is. But it doesn't really it doesn't tell you why quantum physics has to be, probability at the root. It doesn't tell you why C changes in a few spots. It doesn't tell you why you have to have all those constants all tuned to each other. And this explains all those and a whole lot more things. So
That is
it's
a theory of
more
everything.
it's a theory of everything. And the thing is, it actually also gives you a scientific theory of the subjective world.
Yeah,
So
yeah, I understand.
you understand why people are unhappy because of fear. Fear is the basic thing that creates the problem, which will get back to your thing about saying you fear for your child, and that's about the child. You fear for yourself because you don't want your child to be hurt. You don't want your child to be, you know, to find negative things in its life. You want, but it's because I don't want my child to be hurt. I don't want my child to hang out in the wrong company. I don't want my child.
It's not selfishness though, is it, Tom?
It's about another person,
It's the
yes,
opposite of selfishness.
but it is about you, what you don't want.
Well, obviously, everything that I am engaged with involves me, because otherwise it wouldn't be
Exactly.
mine. But that
Right.
doesn't make everything. My love is also involves me, but it's not selfish. So
No,
my
no,
love.
right. That's love
So
is about other.
yeah,
So
well,
yes,
love is also mine. It's also I love it, and the same with the fear for my child's safety. I fear for her safety.
yeah,
I would sacrifice, which is the complete opposite of selfishness, within an instant,
yeah.
everything I am and everything I have
But
for her. So if that's
right.
not a definition of altruism, what the hell is?
Yeah, but I'd say that that's not fear.
Well, of
You
course
say
it is.
fear because you say fear, but what it is you're concerned and you're smart, so you want to do those things that will help your child. But if it's just fear, fear is dysfunctional. Fear makes you
Is
do
it?
things that are not rational. Yes, fear is not rational. Fear
Does
is
hasn't it
is a
evolved because
feeling.
it's a really good idea? I mean, I taught
No,
my kids to fear.
let's
I taught
let's
them to
put
fear the road, to fear somebody who looks
no.
malicious.
You didn't teach them to fear those things. You taught them to be aware of those things and be careful about those things
Well, that is,
that were potentially dangerous.
yeah.
Fear is a different thing. See,
Oh, is it? Oh,
what I'm calling fear is a little different than what you're
oh, okay,
calling
okay,
fear.
okay. So you mean
So,
something else by fear? You don't.
well, let me put it this way. Here's a good example. Um, okay, you live in the woods, and there's a lot of grizzly bears in the woods, but you have to go through the woods in order to give your grandma on the other sides of the woods her medicine. All right, now if you're fearful, you'd say, well, it'd be a good thing to be fearful of the bears.
Yeah.
No, it's a bad thing to be fearful of the bears. It's a good thing to be aware of the bears, understand how bears think and how they act. Make sure you have your pepper spray, your air horn, and whatever else you might need. That's called planning. That's intelligence. That's you learning. If you have fear about the bear, you're going to do all the wrong things. You're going to smell like fear. You're going to smell like prey. When you see that bear, you're going to turn around and run because that's what fear does. And the bear is going to see you as prey and chase you and bite you. So if you're not fearful, you will do what you can do. You'll use your pepper spray. You'll use your air horn. You'll be smart, and you have a higher probability of getting to grandma's house. The fear is a problem. Being aware, teaching your kids things that they will need to survive, things they will need to get on. That's just being smart. That's not
Okay.
fear.
Okay, so
I see
we've
fear
probably got
as
definitions for what you mean.
yeah,
I see it much more in a biological
yeah,
sense, as rooted in the evolutionary sense, like all of our
yeah,
responses. They arrive for a reason, and it's arisen because it serves a purpose, and
yeah,
then it's got translated onto a
yeah,
more psyche level, onto an
exactly.
ideational level, and
Yeah,
and
so,
it
so
plays a role.
yeah.
I see it much more
Yeah, so,
naturalistically, I
yeah,
guess.
somebody tells me, says, Tom, well, if you're fearless, why don't you jump off a cliff? And I say, no, I may be fearless, but I'm not stupid. You
Yeah,
see,
yeah,
being fearful or being not fearful doesn't mean you're stupid.
yeah.
So I'm not fearful of the bears, but I'm prepared for the bears, and I know
Well, I
how
mean,
to.
obviously that makes sense. That you
Yeah,
should be
that's prepared.
prepared. I'm not.
Yeah,
I'm
but
not
if
sure that
you're
accounts for fear, but
exactly,
but
you're
I completely agree that
yeah, that's
that
we're
having
just
an
saying
intelligent
fear. Yeah,
response is what you want.
yeah, we're just saying a little different words for the same thing. A common usage of the word fear is I fear for my children, and that's
Yeah.
just a common use. But actually, if you look at fear and what
Okay.
fear
Give me
is
that.
not helpful because
Well, that,
fear would say, I'm afraid for my children, therefore I'm going to keep my children kind of at home. I'm not going to let them go out and
well, that would be a
socialize where they could get
dysfunctional
hurt. That
response
would be
to
a
fear.
dysfunction. That's fear. But if you
Well,
just
not
are
entirely.
aware of your children and you realize that you need to give them some guidance and help and keep them safe and so on, well, that's just being prepared and that's trying to help. That's not fear. So I
Okay.
see fear always as a
As an
negative.
okay, you've got a
It's
negative version of it.
it's
I
yeah,
understand.
it's the thing that makes you screw up. When you're
Okay.
afraid, that's the deer in the headlights. The deer in
Okay.
the headlights is rendered immobile because of their fear. Whereas if they
Yeah, but
didn't have
it's a
that.
real that even that has arisen for a functional reason, hasn't it?
Well,
It,
yes, but the functional reason is if there's an animal out there stalking them and they hold very still,
exactly.
they're more likely to survive. So
Yes.
holding still is a survival mechanism
And
that
that's a
they
right. And the
do.
fear surely is the chemicals that shoot through the body to make it alert,
Yeah,
ready to hold very still, and then run like mad if the moment comes.
yeah,
That's what fear is. It's like, anyway. We've got a different. I would
yeah,
take I think I would take a much more evolutionary approach to the whole of biology, probably. But
yeah.
we
Well,
have
anyways,
spoken, sir, for an hour and 45 minutes. That's absolutely fascinating.
yeah.
Thank
Well,
you for giving me so much time. It was wonderful to connect. I I will put with this a whole load of details and about yourself, and we can share it on both our channels and all the rest of it. And it's been great to hear so much detail of your big toe,
yeah,
and I can see what I've gained from it is the sense in which what appeals to you is the completeness of it, that it can answer so many things, and that is where, and I resonate with that because I have exactly the same thing with this alternative way of looking at it that I've
mhm,
been playing with. It feels the same. The thing which impresses me the most, that makes it most compelling, is that it answers so many things right the way through, like yourself. That's why it's a big toe.
mhm,
It goes right from why quantum physics is probabilistic, why mathematics exists, to what is God, or what is death, or how does magic happen, and all of those things. So I really see a great resonance in what we're
Mhm.
attempting to do, and that you have done that is immensely impressive. And I want to say, yeah, fantastic. Well,
Yeah.
amazing thing to do.
Yeah, I would say from what I know of you that we both kind of understand the same thing, but we just we're just looking at it from different
I
perspectives,
think that's definitely
and
right.
and that if we sat down and did a list of all the consequences, the things that happen, and the things that are out there, that we would probably agree almost 100%
Yeah,
on, what's good, what's bad, what are the
yeah,
consequences, and
yeah,
how does it work, and why does it work that way. You're just looking at it from a different perspective, and that's good. Different perspectives are necessary. Diversity is necessary. We don't want everything to be the same.
yeah.
In my book, one of the first things I say, even in an introduction, is, don't believe in what I'm telling you. My
Right.
big toe is just a template for you to start your own big toe. It has to be your big toe, not my big toe. If
I
it's
do exactly the
mine,
same,
yeah, if
Tom.
it's
I love
mine, then
that.
you're stuck in a position of having to believe it or disbelieve it. And neither
Yeah,
one of those are helpful. If
yeah,
it's your own, then
yeah,
it's yours. You
yeah,
own it.
yeah,
And if it's not your experience, it's not your truth. So I tell people that, and we need lots of diversity in approaching spirituality
yeah,
and in science, all these things. We need diversity because with sameness comes ruts.
yeah,
You
yeah,
get into the same thinking, and pretty soon important things go by and you miss them because you're not open to change. You're not open to seeing things in a different way. So you present a way, and that'll resonate with these people, and I
yeah,
present a way, and that'll resonate with those people. And all of that is fine because we're going in the same direction. It all
yeah,
comes down to spirituality. Love is what we're trying to become, and fear is the thing we're trying not to have, and it all kind of goes to the same place, which is good. Some people will prefer yours, some people will prefer mine, and there's probably four or five or six other things out there that are all heading in the same direction, and I see us all in the same boat, pulling on the oars in the same direction, and with all of us together, we'll get there.
Wow. Well, that was beautifully put, Tom. I'm going to resist the temptation to add anything to that because you've said it so beautifully, and we are moving definitely in that direction of love. There's no doubt about that. That the love is the thing we want to find, and I love the fact that you're offering a new way of understanding spirituality because I think we need that. And my hope, as with you, is that all these different approaches we will find in that discussion the future of spirituality, and that it can come back in a new form and really play the role it needs to play in taking us towards that new world
Yeah.
and that greater love.
Yes. I've enjoyed our conversation because very rarely do I have someone who, likes to challenge, the things I say. Mostly people, uh-huh. But I like it. It's been a lot of fun to talk with you and have you say, well, I don't agree with that. I like that. And, one of the reasons I've gone in the perspective that I have is because I am a scientist. I'm a physicist, so I see things in terms of rational structures and information and that sort of thing. And I also see that these ideas have been around for at least 2,500 years. That takes you back to the Buddha, who said that the world outside the physical world was Maya, was illusion. I say it's a virtual reality. I think those are about the same thing. Anyway, all of that religion is now in the margins. It's never broken out. These ideas and these concepts are alive and well and have been for a long time in the margins. And if you look at all of the mystical schools that, the Gnostics, the whirling dervishes, just go through all the various mystical schools that there are around there, even the indigenous people with their shaman, you'll find that basically it all pulls together. We're all kind of saying the same thing. It's all part of one bigger understanding, but I think that in order to get out of the margins into the mainstream, to where these big ideas, your big ideas, my big ideas, it doesn't matter whether it's your ideas or my ideas, that's irrelevant. But the ideas that we want to move toward love and we want to move away from fear, if that idea is going to go mainstream, then the best and most, I guess I should say that the closest way we're going to get there, the soonest we're going to get there, is if we can get the scientists
Yes.
to
Yes.
lead this charge, because
Yes.
in my work, I call the scientists the high priests of Western culture.
Yes.
And that's because
right.
the high priest's job is to tell everybody else what to believe.
Yes, that's right.
So
that's right.
the scientists are key.
Yep, they are.
And the scientists now, there are a lot of scientists who will say that reality is information based because quantum physics has told them that.
Pretty much
the
established.
So the next step after that, is where we're going. That's what both of us are about.
Agreed. Agreed.
So that's where we are.
Agreed.
So if we can get the scientists
Absolutely
to say one day, yea, verily, the reality is information based. And what that means is,
yes.
My point, that this is a virtual reality. In your point, it's different. And it doesn't matter which one. But if we can get the scientists there, then everybody else will follow.
Yeah.
And if we can't get the scientists there, it's going to be a long haul. It may take several more centuries before we get there.
You are absolutely right, Tom. I think that is exactly it. Exactly. Yes. You just said it. That's it. And that's the job. That's the job of people who are doing what we're trying to do, is to develop the most coherent way of understanding this, which can include the insights and the experiences, especially associated with spirituality, show that they are significant and real, and yet bring them into some coherence with what we know from physics and biology and even mathematics, that it is one body of human knowledge and experience. And once that split is healed, then everything moves forward.
Yeah, I agree with that. That's been my idea from the very beginning. Matter of fact, I wrote my books for the left brain logical process people, because there's thousands of books out there for the right brain intuitives.
Right.
The poetry, all of that's fine. But the left brain logical types read that poetry and they throw it away because they don't have logic. They can't find the logical process in it.
Yeah.
And I wrote my books to appeal to the left brain logical process people, and they start and they use logical process all the way through, and they end up with spirituality at the end, and it gives them a bridge to get there that they can't get. So trying to bring them online with a better physics, a more improved, more general physics, I'm hoping that will entice them to take that leap. And I think it will. And I think it might do that in the next, couple of decades even. Because this idea that our reality is information based is getting strong.
It's very
strong.
Yeah, it's massive.
They know
massive.
that.
Yeah.
So what does that mean? It's information based.
Yeah, it changes everything. So I completely, this is where we're absolutely in alignment. I think that's right. So, I've loved talking to you, Tom, and I knew I would, but I've enjoyed it even more than I thought I would. And hopefully maybe we can get to do this again. Maybe we can even do it in person one day. That would be lovely. You're not, I'm speaking at the Monroe conference in Italy, but you're not there this time. Is that right?
No, I won't be there.
Okay. So I hope one day somehow our paths cross in person as well as digitally virtually.
It's been a lot of fun.
Yeah, it has.
Tim.
It's great. It's a real honor to meet you and be able to engage with you. And just as you've said, it's nice having someone challenge you. I love also meeting people that want to be challenged. I'm like that. I love that. It's like, let's do it. And not everyone is. Some people find that really don't like that at all. And it's been great that we've been able to engage like that. And it's always a relief to me when I'm with somebody who I know I can just play, because we're both searching for the truth. So why would you not?
Yeah. And there's plenty of room for multiple perspectives. Multiple perspectives are good. Trying to unify everybody to the same identical perspective is a bad idea.
Yeah.
You need
Certainly,
to,
it's the best way to find the good ideas is to have lots of ideas in competition.
yes, that's true. But it's not even the idea that we have to end up sometime with just one right answer. Let there be multiple answers. Let there be multiple ways of thinking about things. There's nothing wrong with that. It's not like there is this one truth and we all have to agree exactly how to say it and use the same words in the same way. We don't need that. We just
Uh,
need everybody moving toward love and away from fear. That's what we need. And if that has 10 or 20 different ways of being expressed, that's wonderful.
Fantastic.
There's no problem because we, like you and I talking, you see, we realize that the differences and the perspectives we have, and that's fine. That's
So
good.
just so you know, Tom, just because I haven't shown this side of myself, the place I've come from and still keep my attention is I'm about to run a retreat at the beginning of October, and it's called Big Love in Our Bittersweet World, because I absolutely get what you're saying, because I've that's been the dominant theme of the whole of my life, has been how can I and then how can we move towards that, what I just call it the big love, that universal
Hmm.
agape, that meta, that bigger thing. So the fact that you are framing something which is able to address science and all the rest of it, and also just go, yeah, but it's about love at the end, is like, that's music to my ears and something I resonate with very deeply.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
thank you.
Well, it's all one thing, it's one, it's all needs to be integrated together. This
Yeah,
idea that you have spirituality on one side of the wall, and then on the other side of the wall, you
yeah,
have science, and those two can't conflict, they conflict with each other. They'll never mix. That's the wrong viewpoint. That's because materialism points us in that direction. But
yeah,
once you get rid of materialism and you realize that this is
yeah.
consciousness and it's about evolution and it's about becoming love and that's what we're here for, etc., and that yeah, there's still physics. You don't have to get rid of physics. Physics is still there. You still have this virtual reality, physical universe, and it's good to know what its rules are and understand those rules. So that's just a piece of a larger thing. So if you can see it all as one larger thing, and it's all connected, it's all just as it should be, then it's not a competition. It's not the scientists against the spiritualists. It's all part of the same thing. Because
So Tom,
those scientists are physical people too,
they are,
they're
and they are
yeah,
also facing death and
yes,
meaninglessness, and they also have strange events happen to them all the time, because
yes,
it's happening to all of us. So
right.
so Tom, I know you're obviously a very busy man. You're doing lots of things in the world, and good for you. If you ever think, oh, I'll just do this for a bit, and I would be fascinated if you ever did take a listen to my pod book, which is
Hmm.
expanding right now, because you would see this other approach that I'm exploring laid out, one idea after the other in a very
Hmm.
logical way, and I'd love to know what you made of it.
Okay.
And you can either communicate with me or we can have another conversation. But yeah, that would be fascinating. And then you can do the
That's
same to me. You can go, yeah, Tim, what do you mean by this? And I can sit there going, oh, hang on, and we can play
Mhm.
that out. That would be fun.
Okay. All right. It's been fun, Tim.
Yeah, real
I think
pleasure.
we
Thank
should
you
do
so
it again
much.
sometime.
Yeah, 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 yeah. All right. Have a great rest of your day. Mine's drawing to the end, and yeah, big love, Tom. That's
Big love. Yes.